Hey ratbags, it's Jade. Welcome to a special video taking a look at Dying Light 2 and basically converting 4 hours of me playing the game into about half an hour, giving you the kind of highlights of what to expect. Maybe you're thinking about picking the game up, you want to see what it is for yourself. I'm going to show you some of the good bits. I'm also going to give you a bit of feedback, tell you what I like about most of the stuff, or some bits that I feel need a bit of work. So the game's actually set 15 years after the fall, and I do believe a full 20 years after the first one. You will not be seeing any returning characters from any of the press releases I've read from the first game. And of course we know now that you are a pilgrim. Your name is Aiden, and the general beat of the story is you're basically trying to find out what happened to your sister and some strange mad scientist that maybe was experimenting on kids. The virus has been taking hold for a number of years now, and it's fully wiped out humanity almost, with a city that we are going to be calling home called the Villa d'Air, and that's pretty much one of the last bastions of humanity. The first hour, of course, as you would expect, is more or less tutorials, and compared to the first game I actually prefer it. I think it gradually gets you in there, but it's not boring or kind of monotonous. I'm also pretty interested in the idea of exploring the countryside, maybe in DLC in the future. But your character as a pilgrim, you're tasked with basically running from town to town, doing missions that no one else wants to do, and for some reason people don't really like you. Maybe they're worried that you're going to bring death and ruin to their doors, but yeah, you're not well respected and there's only a small band of you that do the job. Of course, lots of parkouring, getting used to stuff before you meet your first kind of NPC buddy.
Shit, man, you're still strong.
You eventually make your way to a fancy house after exploring it and learning some more mechanics about stealth and cover, and he will reveal to you there's an informer nearby that's going to give you some details potentially about who you're looking for. We also learn that Aiden is looking for the mad scientist, who turns out his name is Waltz. Says goodbye to his parkour friend, and it's time to get going. We then start making our way to the radio tower before venturing finally into Villador, and something that was reminiscent of Assassin's Creed and the eagle jumps before. This was pretty cool. In the first sort of 10 to 12 hours that I've played with the game, I haven't yet needed to swim anywhere else other than in just these little sessions getting into the city. You learn how to swing a bat at a zombo's head, and then we quickly move on. A train tunnel teaches us the importance of stealth as the Zeds lie asleep down below. The biters are pretty much going to be non-threatening unless you get too close to them. As the sun fully sets, we finally make our way up to the top of the radio tower. We get our first parkour level up. This is the first one that you get, and then we'll get a combat one. After that, you get to choose exactly what skills you want to buy. The skills, some of them are locked behind levels associated with your stamina or your health, and to upgrade your stamina or health you're going to need inhibitors. We'll find these later, but free of an inhibitor gives you one upgrade that you can put and increases obviously your health as well, or your stamina, and then you can go ahead and choose some of your skills if you've built up enough XP in parkour or combat. I've got to say, I really like this system. I love the idea of the parkour chaining stuff together to get more bigger numbers. But so far it hasn't fleshed out to something amazing yet, not until you actually start getting some of these skills that allow you to do all sorts of extra cool jumps, as well as being able to hold on to ledges quicker and longer. Likewise with combat, the combat in Dying Light 2 kind of wants you to be moving around, using the environment and using your special moves as much as possible, parrying and then dodging, activating slow motion and taking them down with a little bit of panache. Doing so increases your XP for combat, and that eventually will lead you to get a combat point. We get our first look at some of the new variants or returning creatures from the game. This guy is pretty much going to be jumping all over these before trying to take your face off. Volatiles do return. In fact, supposedly there might only be around 3 to 7 new actual zombies, so you're going to be experiencing a lot of combat with some of the older ones, but maybe with a few new power moves. Once you're done with the threat, we'll eventually get up into the building and we'll learn about safe houses and stashes. It felt like in the first game there wasn't as many of these kind of zones that you could get safe in. In this one there's so many. You'll be able to activate even more, and depending on how you do with certain factions, they'll open different places for you as well. So there's plenty of places for you to run to if you're ever getting chased by a zombie horde. I messed around with my weapons, and I know this is a bit of a contentious issue. There are no ways to craft brand new weapons in this one. Unlike the first game where you could have some really individual and unique stuff going on, it's more about modifying weapons that you find. You can keep the same weapons, however you are going to have to upgrade them pretty regularly, otherwise if they break because of the durability going low, they will be gone forever. Honestly, this system does kind of suck. I would have definitely preferred some way that we could craft and make our own weapons, as once a weapon breaks in durability, you'll lose any of the mods that you've applied to it, and yeah, it's a bit of a shame. I guess it's also worth pointing out right now that there is no firearms in the game, other than maybe a shotgun consumable that only can get used a couple of times and then depletes. You won't really be using anything like that. The closest you'll get is a bow, and then you might be able to get a special semi-automatic crossbow if you side with the Peacekeepers, one of the factions, a bit later in the game. You need to sleep for the night, and then we get a dream sequence, giving us a little bit of backstory to exactly why or who I'm looking for, and again our maybe encounters with Waltz for the first time. I've obviously yet to finish the game or even explore some of the story, but I'm guessing the mad scientist was experimenting with variations of the disease, because apparently they had cured it, but of course governments decided to use it again to weaponize, and that got out of control, which ultimately led to pretty much the second apocalypse. I think the clues in the title, Stay Human, does look like we will be maybe encountering some sort of abilities a bit later on in the game, hopefully, judging by the amount of scientific research that's been going on and the amount of times they jab me with a needle. After that, the man on the radio tells you to pretty much head to Villador after maybe activating a bit of a boost in the signal for the radio tower, and that's it, we're on our way. I've got to say, I find some of the colour palettes absolutely amazing. I love the look of it, and it was running pretty well. Bearing in mind though that I have got a 390 graphics card. I do understand that a lot of people are reporting lots of bugs, and especially on console, the word is that you've got to wait for that day one patch and kind of hope it fixes a lot of the issues. You finally make your way to the outskirts of the city, going through a few more Zeds, and then we've got to explore the train tunnels. The game is pretty gruesome. There's a huge amount of gore, much more than the first one if that's even possible, and you can't really turn it off, I don't think. But you can customise a lot of the options so you don't have health bars above Zed's faces and a lot more. We get a nice little surprise from one of the more scary zombos, and this is where we get infected.
Oh shit!
But thankfully we're rescued by the mysterious man on the radio. It doesn't take long for the infection to take hold, and we basically have a bit of a paddy. You eventually awake to find the dude has been kidnapped by some of the renegades, and you have to go through some tunnels again and corridors to try and find him. Here you're going to learn a bit more about parrying and dodging out of the way, and how to take on some of these guys with a little bit more finesse. Somehow the melee combat isn't as maybe satisfying as I'd hope it would be. So far, yes, you can unlock some new skills that give you a lot more abilities, but they're still pretty reliant on you utilising an environment. When you're stuck in somewhere that's a bit more closed and not as many places to jump up on top of, you do find that it's just a little bit hard, and you have to pretty much always rely on a melee defence or some sort of dodge before actually starting some sort of combo up. And it's relatively simple. You do pretty much the same actions whether or not you're using a blunt weapon or a slash weapon. Obviously some weapons are two-handed, but yeah, this ain't no Batman Arkham Knight. You're not going to get that same level of satisfaction from beating up a whole troop of goons. Although the flying kick move is pretty sweet. The mysterious informant pretty much gets you to safety, and then yeah, he might just end up meeting his demise at the hands of apparently Waltz, the guy you've been looking for and apparently want to kill. But of course he's a bit of a badass and too strong right now, so we'll be back later. Although it's worth pointing out at this time, he wants something, a special key that you've just been given to by the informant. You eventually make it out of the tunnels into Villador, and it's not going to go well in the immediate future. You're basically only ever a few minutes away from turning into a zombie or infected yourself. You need inhibitors now to take on a constant basis if you go out into the dark or get under UV light, which helps keep it at bay. The locals are obviously not going to just allow some infected dude about to turn get away too quickly, so they decide to hang you. Who said small town hospitality has diminished? Don't worry, you're not going to die. Wouldn't be much of a game if you did. You are rescued by Hakon. He's going to be your best bud for the early stages of the game, guiding you through exactly what you should be doing. Tutorials, side quests, he's going to teach you the ropes. But more importantly, he'll also help you progress the main storyline. Once you're patched up a bit, he explains that you are going to need a biomarker, that anyone in the city is not really going to tolerate you for too long unless you get one. Somewhat weirdly, you can't zoom out of the map in the early stages, you have to wait until you get a pair of binoculars before you can actually have a real good look at what's going on. I'm guessing to discourage you from running off too much. Stick with the story beats, stick with Hack-On, don't go wandering off in the early stages. I know it's boring, but the game really does want you to go through these stages first. Hack-On's going to do a very good dad chat and talk to you about the birds and bees. Well, actually, he's going to talk about honey and these special enclaves where you can go ahead and get healing items. Honey and chamomile are the stuff that you're going to be making, and that's going to heal you. You run around following him to head to a biomedical facility to hopefully get yourself one of them biomedical wristwatches, and you discover your key is actually useful for opening up a whole bunch of special crates. You can get valuable technology items from here that you can go ahead and sell with traders or use as other parts in the story. Sadly, it looks like the nighttime has also brought on the heebie-jeebies for you, as you're again about to turn into a zombie, plus we've got a whole bunch of the infected about to give chase to you. The chases so far don't feel that dangerous, there's different levels to them, apparently it goes all the way up to level 4, and you have to really aggravate some of the screamers if you want them to come and get you, and that's when you start getting even more XP from using your parkour and running around. Your XP does generate pretty much for every sort of jump that you do across rooftops, and likewise combat you'll get small amounts, but it's about chaining them together and utilising your skills to gain and generate more XP. Right now though, we've got to focus and try and get into some UV light before the zombos get us. You get turned away from the main central hub place before finally getting somewhere that might be a bit safer while you defeat a few more hordes. So far I've found that dodging zombies is usually the best thing to do, as I can't really tell their attacks as much as I can the NPC humans. And a lot of the skills with combat are definitely lots bigger behind sort of walls where you maybe wouldn't expect it. So you're not going to be kicking off zombies just yet, but eventually you will be able to throw them absolute yards. It's quite arcadey, it's quite interesting how they've done it. I say it's probably tend to be a bit more fun, but yeah, in the early days you pretty much just swing and hope. Eventually we finally get let in by Hack-On's mate, and the zombies you can see start to fry in the UV light. We meet this dude and then we don't meet him again for like 8 hours, 9 hours. I don't think I've actually come across him once more. But he does allow us to use the safe house and stay for the night. A little while later we then get to take a look at our first GRE kind of building, which is going to be a medical facility to go and get a biomarker. Places like this you should really come at night time because that's when the zombos are meant to be going out into the streets, and it's in daytime that it's actually more dangerous to explore some of these zones. You can clearly tell though these medical centres, they'll have a whole bunch of inhibitors in them and various other loot. Yay, lockpicking minigames, so novel, so great in 2022. The hospital level is pretty big and involved. You're going to be doing a lot of stealth work as you try and hide from a whole bunch of zombies as you progress through it. And of course, just like any good schlocky movie, some bad stuff happens and you're going to be on your own for a little bit. But it's not going to be that easy. You've got some more of the volatiles searching around for you in here. Eventually, after a lot of stealth and hiding under tables, you should eventually get to the chest that you're looking for. This is where you find the majority of your inhibitors all scattered throughout the world and increasing your stamina or your health. There are some missions and chests that will give you even double the amount of inhibitors, and there's 120 that you can actually get in the world. So in theory, you should be able to upgrade or level up your health and stamina at least 40 times. So check the level of it, see if it's about suitable, and try and always go and explore either the quarantine or the anomaly zones. The quarantine zones are mostly about stealth and the actual anomaly zones are mostly about combat. You eventually find your biomarker and now it's time to hopefully escape. So whenever you do go into a building like this, it does set off the dark mode, and so whatever your immunity level is, that's how long you've got to explore unless you're going to use consumables or you do find some UV light. So I had to make a frantic dash to the exit, being chased by some of these dudes. And so far, I've really enjoyed the blender mix. I had never played the first one a massive amount, only recently have I revisited it, and I've got to say the second one is grabbing my attention. It's filled with stuff to do, loads of stuff to do in fact, and they've got parkour challenges that you can go and do. The story seems alright as well. There's a few issues with dialogue that I think are a bit iffy, but otherwise I wouldn't say it's the worst I've seen or heard, and definitely feels a lot more better paced than the first one. I also feel like it doesn't overwhelm you, or the difficulty doesn't ramp up like it did with the first one. I did feel like that just suddenly went, whoa, you need to know how to survive. You finally get some access to some binoculars as your reward for going exploring with Hakan. They allow you to have a little nosy and ping any objectives or side quests or missions around the world. And you get a first look at the windmills, which you need to activate to help get more safe places in and around. You finally also get to zoom out on the map, and this first section is huge. This is only one of like maybe 3, so it's going to be a long time exploring this game. I went and caused some trouble with an evacuation convoy to try and get some loot. There's plenty of items that you can use in and around, like environmental bottles that you can throw, sometimes spears, and lots of canisters that you can also set alight and throw as well. They do cause cars to blow up occasionally, just maybe at the wrong times, and you can sometimes set them off using some of your throwable consumables. Definitely does feel like the streets aren't as lined with zombies as we kind of maybe were led to believe from certain trailers. I don't think it's a terrible thing. I kind of like the idea that I can pick and choose when to have a fight. And obviously at night time, if you do make a mistake, there's been plenty of times where I've had to run away and get chased. Although it's never been that hard. I am a bit of a cheesy gamer. I haven't got time to be playing no Dark Souls, so I had this on easy, but I'm kind of regretting that now. So I definitely recommend you whack it on medium or hard. Eventually clearing it all out, I got some new loot and some more valuables that you could go and sell, and that was pretty much it. Encounters scattered all across the map are going to be a great way to get some quick XP. I found these bandits on top of a forsaken store, which we'll talk about in a second, and taking them out though does reward you heavily in points, so it's always worth doing these. In the early stages I was definitely still trying to brush up on my combat a little. Came across that windmill and yep, I decided to try and climb it. So yeah, they can be a little bit of a challenge, and there's definitely some other bigger challenges in parkour where you try and find military crates on top of some of the buildings. You can pretty much scour every single skyscraper in the game, although some of them may need special equipment to actually get there. Some of these do require a certain level in stamina as well. You're just not going to have enough no matter how much you think you can cheese until you upgrade your stamina. Again, these are well worth it though. If you can do it, it says you're the right stamina level, absolutely always power these up. They'll give you safe spots, they'll give you some traders, and it'll just make generally the area around a little bit nicer to be. Whatever the majority of the faction inside that region is, that's the one that it will turn out, unless you've already decided what faction you want to choose, because you've gone and done one of the missions in one of the newer areas. That was the end of my second little session I had. I was breaking them up a little bit, and then when I come back I started exploring a little bit more and seeing what the world had to offer. From what I can tell, you can mostly stay safe by being up on the rooftops, a lot more than you could maybe in the base game. In fact, nighttime and daytime has really been worked on a lot. Nighttime is all about maybe taking a chance and getting more XP, because you get double XP at night while doing certain stuff. But you can kind of stay a little bit safe as long as you're paying attention to UV light places and safe spots, and obviously unlocking new ones or checking out settlements. As you progress, you'll be able to work off the two factions, the Peacekeepers and the Survivors, and depending on what you choose, you'll have access to a whole new tricks. If you side with Peacekeepers, eventually you'll be able to set up all sorts of traps, car alarms, turret towers, and a lot more. If you side more with the Survivors, in different stages you'll be able to get access to more parkour sort of equipment, things like jump pads or landing punch bags where you can literally jump off a roof and land safely. So I spent a good amount of time exploring before I came across one of the Dark Hollows. These are loot areas where you can get valuables as well as possibly some inhibitors, and these are definitely worth a visit if it's right level. Some of these are extremely tough and hard. You'll find some zombos that are just way too above your level, so you have got to come prepared and make sure it's suitable. And yep, during the day these are deadly. They're filled with much more zombies and infected, so it's pretty much advised to come here at night time only. Lots of these zones and others are filled with chemicals that do a lot of damage to you, so you will have to use consumables and stuff to give you a bit of a boost, or possibly find even some armour that reduces how much damage this does or allows you to breathe a little bit easier. You can find these strange crystals in places like this, as well as others, and this is kind of the valuable resource that you could go ahead and sell for gold coins and be able to buy brand new weapons, consumables and crafting stuff in the future. And some of the blue mushrooms just to keep my immunity at bay, and like I said, you can get better equipment or consumables that will give you much longer as a top up. So just eating them mushrooms isn't always a good idea. You're better off trying to find the recipe as soon as you can that you can buy a finger blueprint or get given so you can craft and make your own. And that was my second inhibitor. So whenever the countdown's getting a bit too low and you can't get to a UV light or safety, then taking one of these is going to extend it. We meet our first side quest character telling us all about his fish. Apparently that's someone has maybe eaten as well as drink the fish water. And you get given a weird little knife, and these are all just valuable items that you can sell. I don't think they've got any other uses as far as I know. Although I have come across a few NPCs wanting certain stuff, but I think it's mostly been actual resources, and so giving it to them means that you can complete a little mission quickly and get some XP. We do also find a vendor, and we can go through exactly the type of weapons that you might be able to upgrade to. You can see the durability levels in them are pretty bad in certain cases, and you can obviously go and sell some of your items too. There's meant to be like 4 classes: medic, brawler, tank and ranger class, and you can get all sorts of armor and equipment to help with that. Lots of them do all sorts of stuff, like give you extra bonus combat XP, some of them take reduced damage, you'll get more damage with certain armor pieces against zombies or other enemies, regenerate your health quicker, etc, etc. So it's a bit mix and match, but none of it feels that unique. You'll learn or find blueprints that allow you to craft consumables, either throwing knives or healing items or lockpicks, and that will continue and you'll get more items in the future. Things like the parachute as well as the grapple you won't actually get until much later in the game. Although parachute I think within about 7 to 8 hours possibly if you stick just to the story, and then grapple you might not get to the very end. I went ahead and used up some of my points that I'd been accruing. And then I went and used my special key to gain access to a little military hot zone and get maybe some decent loot. These areas are normally guarded by a lot more Zeds, but because it was still kind of tutorial stages, I did feel like it had kind of removed a lot of them. So it might be worth doing the same, checking out some of these locations before you progress any further in the story. But don't go too mad. Like I said, you want to get through the story so you can unlock some of the newer items and features. Eventually got in, but as you can see my timer is dipping very low, so it was time to find some UV light quick. Some areas will always have items that you can use to get around and traverse a bit quicker and easier. You don't always have to wait until you side with a faction, and we'll get to that a little bit later where you have to actually do a specific mission before turning one region over to one faction or another. And there you go, that's pretty much my first 4 hours in the game. I did obviously spend a lot more time exploring, getting used to combat, looting stuff, but I just kept the best bits in and just giving you an idea what to expect. I definitely feel like I wish I just ploughed on with the story, then messed around and looked about a little bit more. As like I said, you do get some other items and stuff a bit quicker, and it just kind of blends a bit nicer. But that said, if you just want to explore and do your own thing, then I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. There's so much to do, so many side quests and missions. I feel like eventually it will get repetitive, but I'm hoping that if I go into the next area, which I'm about to do now, then yeah, it might freshen things up a bit more, especially when I get some of the upgrades that allow for a bit more traversal. Some of the systems do feel a little bit weak sauce, certain parts of the crafting and some of the upgrade paths and stuff don't feel as good as they could have been. I feel like I could have even gone a bit more madder with some of the skills in what they allow you to do. But hey-o, we'll see how it develops. Obviously the first game had great support for years and years, and I reckon they'll probably do the same in this one. So enjoy, hopefully it runs well on console. I'll do my best to see if I can get hold of a copy and try it out. Until next time, go and check out the rest of my guides, and I'll see you rat bags later.